situation, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Ann Coulter explains that immigration is the most important issue because it determines all other issues. And we know the Democrats think they have a political advantage with immigration. And of course, here is what the border would look like if most of the immigrants voted for Republicans. And Nancy Pelosi will be taking, and Barack Obama will be taking turns garrisoning the wall. You can see how bad things are going, and you can see that every time on the news. Here are the latest figures. And these are immigrants they've caught, and under the current immigration laws as interpreted by liberal Obama judges, everyone that gets caught gets released into the country if they say the word asylum or if they have a child with them, whether it's their child or not. So going the red line is fiscal 19 beginning in October. I'm just going to give you in the thousands. October 60,000, November 62,000, December 60,000, January 58,000, February 76,000, March 103,000. You see it's taking off. April 109,000, May 144,000, and it's probably going to be more than 200,000 for June, or at least by July. Here's a scene of what's happening on our border.
I remember that Obamacare put me out of business, so what you're saying, they insured everybody, but they didn't pay the providers.
No.
Where they had the battle. Now I understand it was the insurance. I'm shredding charts this year.
We literally cannot control the border.
The insurance says no, we're not.
Everyone who shows up gets in.
Yes. Yes.
And you just see it happening
Look,
here.
he looks like he's 90. I don't know how long he can stand.
And it's not just, our guest here, when we were talking about this more in just a minute here, it's not just from Central America. They're getting people, the word is out all over the world. Step across the border and you're in. Well, we are very pleased and honored to address the situation and explain the situation and what can be done is Chris Harris. He's a long-time veteran of the Border Patrol. He's now retired, but he hasn't left the service, and he's carrying out the cause by helping to get the word out wherever we can. Groups like this, on TV, wherever we can. At one point in his career, he was hit in the head by a rock thrown by an illegal alien, and it took him several years to recover from that. So it's really a dangerous occupation. The guys, and I had them on the radio show, they're out there on their own, maybe 50 miles to the nearest backup agent. The politicians in Washington give them equipment, radios that don't work well. His office had one 1960s era night vision device. That's what the politicians in Washington do because they want to see the scene previously where they're pouring across the border. That's what the politicians in Washington want, most of them. Chris, come on up, and we really appreciate you driving up from San Diego to tell us what's going on and what we can do about it. Chris Harris.
Before I tell you about myself, I do want to talk about something that has nothing to do with the border, but D-Day, 75 years ago. 5 beaches, Sword, Juno, Gold, those are the British and Canadian beaches, Utah and Omaha. Omaha earned the nickname Bloody Omaha. I'm a Republican, but we've got to get back to working together. And I know the Democrats are making it extremely impossible or hard to do right now. But just remember this, those young men who died on the beach that day, who stormed that beach, were Republicans and Democrats. They died together. So I appreciate being Republican, but if we can't learn to get the Democrats to work with us, if we can't figure that out, we are done. Because I'll talk about that later on, that they're doing nothing in Washington right now, and the difference just 3-4 years ago to now. So my name's Chris Harris. I started in law enforcement in 1982 at the tender age of 18. I became a New York State correction officer, and I went to work at a fun little place called Sing Sing. You might have heard of that. I like to work with the crowd. I don't like being up above and all that. So I will walk around and hopefully you can see and hear me. So I was there in Sing Sing in 1982-83, and they rioted. They took 18 of my brother officers hostage. They had a cute little thing the inmates did in B Block. They took the officers, they stripped them down, put them in inmate clothing, and put them in different cells. Each one was assigned an inmate executioner with a hood and a weapon. So we were going to go in and by force try to take them out. And we found that out. We realized that 18 of them would be executed. So we negotiated and we got them out after 3 days. Every one of them resigned. Those of us that were involved in the riot were allowed to go to other prisons. I went to Downstate Correctional Facility, and most of my career was running a cell block there. And I learned a lot. And I learned that New York State corrections, or all corrections, just sucks. I said I'm Irish. I was a cop in New York. I do swear sometimes. I try not to. My wife, God bless her, gets on me about it. But if I slip up, I don't really give a shit. So corrections, I realized sucked. Wasn't for me. I got out. I took a $14,000 pay cut, became a cop. Best thing I ever did. I'm a detective. I was trained by the DEA for narcotics investigations. I wanted to become a deputy U.S. Marshal. And my friend had done that, and he said the best way to do was go to the Treasury Department. So I went to the Treasury Department as a federal officer. And my chief there said, Chris, I'm not going to send you down to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe to be a cop because, you know, you've been a cop. I'm going to send the new hires down. Well, these new hires started coming back in the mid-90s. And they were talking about the Border Patrol. And it was our first big push in the Border Patrol to hire a lot of people. We had never heard of the Border Patrol. I think in New York, there might have been 4 Border Patrol agents on the northern border at the time. So I figured, all right, you know what? I want to give it a shot. Because they were saying, man, these guys are hardcore. They run everywhere. They march everywhere. Their PT is like insane Marine Corps PT. These guys are hardcore. I said, well, what do they do? Well, they do city patrol. I'm like, cool, I do city patrol. They work narcotics, lots of narcotics. That's my bread and butter. They work in the great outdoors too. I was like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I always wanted to try that. And God bless if you've lived in one place your whole life and you wanted to stay there and that's what you wanted, God bless. But I didn't want to be 80 years old on my rocking chair on my porch and go, I was born here, I was raised here, I raised my kids here, and I'm going to die here. So I did want to try something different. And anybody here from the Northeast or the North? Yeah, you know winters suck. They truly do. And I'm old enough, we didn't have the click-clicks for cars. We literally had to take a lighter to your key to get it into the lock because the lock was frozen. And when you're on the cops, even if there's a blizzard and they declare a state of emergency and everybody gets a snow day, even the adults get to stay home from work, we still had to go to work. And shoving your car out for 2 hours just to go to work sucked too. So I said, all right, let me give this a shot. And my wife said, no, that's cool. So I put in for it. And they send you a package. And in the package, they tell you, basically, you're going to be sent to a shithole. And I use that term because the president used it. You're going to be sent to a shithole. There's going to be substandard housing, substandard medical, substandard schools, and probably not a job for your spouse. And my wife passed away young in 2002, but God rest her soul. But she said, I'll go wherever you go, Chris. I'm married to you, but I don't want to bring our daughters there. And I said, no, I'm not. I got a good job. I'm a cop. I don't need to go there. Then I got the second package, and they said, San Diego. So I've heard of that place. 70 degrees, 80 degrees every day, sunny, doesn't ever rain. And how many people here are native Californios? Yeah, you're all liars. I came out in 97. What was going on then? El Nino. It rained for months straight. And they got my youngest working on midnight shift because I got no seniority. And so they were teaching courses in the Border Patrol about hypothermia in San Diego. I left to get away from that. And so then the El Nino kind of goes away, and then it was May. And guess what happens in May? May gray. Like, what the hell is this? And then it's June, and what's that? June gloom. Are you kidding me? You're all liars. It got better. It got better. So I spent 21 and a half years in the Border Patrol, 36 years in total in law enforcement. One of the things I did was get the question and answers very quickly, because I want to hear what you want to know. But I do give a background on DHS and CBP and Border Patrol, because I've done a lot of these talks and I've had people ask me about them. And then I realized that even congressmen that I've worked with don't always know about DHS. I am a union guy. I know that's kind of weird for a Republican. I'm a pro-labor guy. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a nurse in New York. I watched them both on strike. My first PD, we were affiliated, our Police Benevolent Association was affiliated with the Teamsters. But my union, National Border Patrol Council, is the first union that endorsed Donald Trump. Brandon Judd, our president, meets with Donald Trump. And that's one of the reasons we endorsed him, because he listens to us. He said to us, I am going to consider you guys the subject matter experts on securing the border, not some Harvard professor, not some La Raza or ACL attorney, you guys. And he has been true to his word on that. So another round of applause for the president, please. So after 2002, the government realized that we did a really crappy job on securing our country. We all remember 9/11. So what they did was they took 22 disparate agencies, different agencies from around the government, and they smooshed them together, and that is a technical term, they smooshed them together. But I'm saddened to say that DHS is still very dysfunctional. It's never lived up to its potential. You've got varied agencies from FEMA to Coast Guard to Secret Service. You just have a plethora of agencies. They don't always get along. There's still empire building, turf building, the whole bit. But what they did was they broke up INS, Immigration Naturalization Service. INS no longer exists. So if you're watching a media source or talking to some activists and they're talking about INS, stop listening to them because they're an idiot. They have no clue what they're talking about. So when they broke up INS, and my job for the union before I retired was I was the director of legislative and political affairs out here. So I worked a lot with a lot of different congressmen, senators, including Democrats. So in 2002, I was in DC for the union monitoring the Congress and Senate when they were forming DHS. So they broke up INS. The sad thing is, when they had all these meetings to figure out what to do with the Border Patrol management hid. They hid. They did not go to these meetings. If they sent anybody, one of them was a friend of mine, lowest ranking guy you can get as a leader in the Border Patrol, Captain's Bars. He said, Chris, I go to these meetings, I just sit in the corner, keep my mouth shut. We're four-star admirals and generals there. I didn't say a word. And the reason management hid was they didn't want to take any hit from 9/11 on them. They wanted no mea culpas. Now the fact is, what happened then is I watched congressmen, senators, I watched one pounding on the podium saying, we need an agency that goes after visa overstays. And you all remember a lot of those terrorists were visa overstays. That, ladies and gentlemen, is and was the Border Patrol. We have that statutory authority. Congress didn't even know that they had given it to us. And if Border Patrol management had said, hey, it's not really our fault we didn't do it because our parent agency, INS, wouldn't let us do it, but if you want us to do it, we're your guys, we'll go do it. And unfortunately, to this day, we still don't have any way to track the visa overstays. We don't go after them. And that's scary because those were the terrorists that a lot of them that hit us the first time. So they broke up INS and they formed an agency called CIS, which is the ones that just loves to give out citizenship and green cards to everybody. And they formed a sub-agency for DHS called CBP. And this is the part that the press gets wrong a lot. And again, if they get it wrong, just ignore them because they're idiots. It's Customs and Border Protection, not Customs and Border Patrol. Customs and Border Protection. Underneath Customs and Border Protection is the U.S. Border Patrol, Office of Field Operations, and Office of Air and Marine. How many Marines are in here, former Marines? I know there's got to be some. Okay, the Marine Corps has its own integral air arm. They've learned, and no slur on the Air Force, but they've learned they need their pilots to go low and slow for close ground air support. The Air Force likes to fly high and fast. We had our own integral air arm. Just like the Marines, where it's the Marines is a Marine first, a pilot second. Our guys were agents first, pilots second. They took that away from us. We no longer have that. Our pilots would land helicopters and physically make arrests. So that's a separate agency now, Office of Air and Marine. Office of Field Operations are the guys with the blue shirts on at the ports. Airports, seaports, land ports, the ports of entry. Those are Customs and Border Protection officers. Their authority only resides at the port. And then you have the Border Patrols. We're federal agents. We have authority throughout the whole country. We have Border Patrol agents stationed in embassies around the world. During the bad old days in Colombia, we had Border Patrol agents running combat patrols in Bogota and in Colombia. We have Border Patrol agents assigned to Iraq and Afghanistan. We can work at the ports, we normally don't. So when you go through the port of entry and you call me up and say, Chris, your guy was an idiot the other day. Man, he was just an asshole. I'm gonna say what color shirt, and when you say blue shirt, I'm gonna say that ain't us. That's not our guys. Our guys wear green shirts when we wear uniforms. So those three subcomponents. The problem there is the United States Border Patrol does more than just a border. The name confused a lot of people in Congress and the Senate. We need to be a standalone agency. Secret Service standalone agency. What I mean by that, the director of the Secret Service answers directly to the director of the Secretary of Homeland Security. Coast Guard, standalone agency. The Admiral in charge answers directly to the Secretary of Homeland Security. My chief in DC right now, Carla Provost, wonderful woman, 4 stars, she answers to the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, who then answers to the Director, or the Secretary of Homeland Security. So there's an extra layer of bureaucracy we have to deal with. The other problem they did wrong, and I love my brothers and sisters in ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they're a standalone agency. Their director, who I know personally, answers to directly to the Secretary. Morgan is the director now, acting director. ICE is a duplicative agency. Again, that was our job. If INS had let us done it, we would have done it. So you have a duplicative agency, and that's no surprise. We're talking about medical and all this duplication. And we have this extra layer of bureaucracy. So that's the problem we deal with in Border Patrol that's systemic, that's built into the system. And what we've been saying is we need to be pulled out of Customs and Border Protection, be a standalone agency, and have our chief answer directly to the Secretary of Homeland Security. And I know Kevin too. I've met Kevin, I've worked with Kevin. He's a scary smart guy. But I'm going to talk about later on a problem with Kevin. And one of the things that we need to do that can help this very, very pessimistic situation. And Kevin doesn't want to do that. All right, so there's 3 things we learned that we need to do to secure the border. 3 things we need. Because we did it. When I came to San Diego in 22 years ago, we were catching, on a rainy night, 1,000 people a night. But the thing we were doing is we were removing them. So you're going to hear arguments from the left and Democrats saying, well, the numbers aren't as bad as they, I mean, they were horrible in the late 90s, they were even worse. Right, we were removing them. We're not removing these people now. That's the big difference. We're releasing them into the United States. But we found what we could do to secure the border in San Diego in certain areas. My area, Imperial Beach Border Patrol Station, from the ocean to the port of entry, 40 miles north. 3 things. Infrastructure. So we got to stop saying build the wall. I know we like to say it's catchy, but the wall there's 2 things wrong with it. The wall has a negative connotation to it, the Berlin Wall and all that. The second thing is we don't want a wall. We want fencing, we want barriers. And the president has listened to us. The president's a big fan of Israel. It cracked me up after the election. People said he was, anti-Semitic. Like, you do know his daughter and his grandchildren are Jewish, right? I mean, you're an idiot. But he was over there and he saw the wall, the anti-terrorism wall, and it works. But they have different rules of engagement, and we don't want those. What we want is fences or barriers. And they not only protect this country, and when I hear people like Pelosi, and I actually worked on a documentary with her daughter, when I hear Nancy Pelosi say walls don't work, I just think, what an idiot. We were just driving through Paris the other day, and Amazon, what's it got around it? Big giant walls and fences. Why? Because they work. All that gold, that bullion in Fort Knox is not sitting in a field guarded by just armed mint police. There's walls and fences. Why? Because they work. But not only do they help secure the border, but they protect our agents. And Greg mentioned earlier that in '96, I went after 4 guys, went up to the fence, grabbed a guy, smuggler got on the top. It was an 8-foot fence. An asthmatic 8-year-old could climb it. It was the original fence that Duncan Hunter, the elder, retired Congressman Duncan Hunter, helped us get. It was better than nothing, but it was never really designed as a fence. The smuggler was able to climb up the fence, jump to the other side, grab a softball rock, jump up on top of the fence, and just throw it directly on top of my head. I had 4 years of traumatic brain injury. So these higher 18 and 30-foot wall, high fences and barriers, they work. Infrastructure is also the roadways that go along it, the lighting, the stadium lighting, all that, that's infrastructure. We need that. Number 2, we need the technology. And Greg was telling half my story before I got up there, but we have radios that don't work. When I was doing border tours for the union, I'd have a government vehicle with a service radio in it. People would freak out when I was calling an agent maybe 100 yards away that I could see, and he couldn't hear me. That's one of our fears, is that you're bleeding out and you can't call out for help. We had a camera system, an IR, an infrared camera system at our station that was from the 1960s, Gen 1. We couldn't get parts for it when it broke because the company went out of business in 2002. So we need better technology. But the thing we absolutely need is crucial, and this is a trite phrase. is the boots on the ground. We need the manpower. And we are 2,000 agents below the statutory minimum that Congress sent. We're supposed to have 21,000 and change. We have 19,000 and change, 21,370. We're 2,000 below. My station 4 years ago was over 400 agents. It's down to 295 agents now. We have to shut things down. We can't do the maritime patrols we were doing. You need the manpower because we can't hire enough. And I could get into that. There's pay disparity. We work 5-10-hour shifts a week. We work 50-hour weeks. Those 10 hours over 40 are straight pay, not time and a half. Try that in private industry and see where you get. So, and we just can't hire enough, and people are leaving. So our mandatory retirement age was 57. Everybody used to stay to 57. I got out at 54. I have a friend who's one of the best agents I ever saw, one of the best bosses I ever worked with, former 82nd Airborne, and he retired at 50. They're getting out early. They're going to other agencies. They're burnt out. The other day in San Diego Sector, we had 150 agents assigned to Hospital Watch. Hospital Watch sucks. You're babysitting some sick or ill or whatever guy in the hospital, you're a prisoner, and you're in the hospital with all the illness the whole day. So we can't hire enough, and the House, and I was talking about this earlier, the House is now actually trying to lower the amount of money available to us. They want to start hamstringing the Border Patrol deliberately, and certainly doing that to ICE. So we're low on manpower. And you can get away with a little less manpower if you have good technology and infrastructure, but there's a point you have to have that manpower. And I'll give you an example. We fly $50 million drones. We have the Global Hawk, or whatever the hell it is. And the agency was trying to get the union on board with all this, and I was one of the people that got to see this videotape they were showing us, like, Chris, look how great this video is. You could see the 3 vehicles coming across the border, and I'll note there was no fence, there was no barrier, just drove across. And he said, look, the pilot zoomed in the camera. You could see the bundles of narcotics in the back of the vehicles. And they showed the 3 SUVs cross into the desert. And they stopped the video, and I said, yeah, but I know the rest of the story. You try to get some agents there for 30 minutes to interdict this, and there was no agents available. So you just stopped watching it, and the drugs went into the United States. You know what your $50 million drone did for us? We've all seen Casablanca, I hope. This is my shock faith, that narcotics are coming to the United States. That's what the $50 million drone did without the manpower, is let us know that illegal narcotics are coming to the United States. If you didn't already know that, then you're an idiot. So you need the 3 things to secure the border. However, there's a glitch now. And it first became identified under Obama. They changed some of the parameters. The law has stayed the same, but they've expanded definitions. It's the asylum laws. Now understand this. The asylum laws are a beautiful thing. It's something Americans should be proud of. It's a golden beacon around the world. But it was meant for when your country was committing genocide against you. It wasn't meant because there was gangs or crime or domestic violence. By the way we're doing it now, if you came from Chicago, you could get asylum in the United States. So understand this. After my wife passed away, I was with a woman who was Thai, but she was born in Cambodia. And she got out with her family in 1980 when she was 10. 1980 when she was 10. They got a raft. They went over the Mekong River into Thailand. We all remember what was happening then. The killing fields, Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. That's real asylum. Her family stayed in a refugee camp in Thailand for a year, and then went to a refugee camp in the PI, the Philippine Islands, for a year before they were spoken for, sponsored by a church in Oklahoma. That, my friends, is real asylum. We don't want that to go away. But every time I meet with Congress people now, I tell them, if the next egregious terrorist attack in this country is tracked back to somebody who gained that asylum system, your knee-jerk reaction will be to shut the whole system down. Fix it now. And they're not going to do it. So it's to the point now where all you have to do is say, credible fear. I have a credible fear. The fact is, though, 2 weeks ago, from around the world, we had 150 people representing 150 countries in custody. So the smuggling organizations work geographically, geopolitical areas. So if you're coming from China, you're going to be coached to say, I'm a Christian, and I'm being persecuted. And that does happen. But I talk about things that I was involved with, so I know they're true. I questioned a Chinese national that I had apprehended, and I said, so you're Christian, okay. Tell me about Jesus Christ. Now I'm a Christian. I need to be a better one, I'm not a good one, but I know the central tenets to my faith. So I asked a guy who's claiming credible fear, he's a Christian, he's being persecuted by his government, tell me about Jesus Christ. He does this. He was a friend of Buddha's. Well, there was like a 800-year period in between the two, so I don't think JC and Buddha were cracking beers together. So he's a liar, but I couldn't do anything about it. So, recently we had a guy that was from, I think it was Mali. We have an agent at my station who's fantastic in getting interviews to give him information without even them knowing it. Well, this guy says, I'm homosexual and I'm from a Muslim nation and I face death. Okay, great. He found the guy's Facebook page with the information the guy gave him. And there's a picture where the guy was in Mexico. There's pictures of his wife and his children on his Facebook page, and him saying, I can't wait to get them up back. I miss my wife, I love her. He's lying. I had a guy that I interviewed from El Salvador. I said, okay, so what's your credible fear? Oh, MS-13's after me. I said, okay. So when you got to Mexico, why didn't you just stop there? Oh, they were to come after me. I said, but you just told me you were like a dirt poor peasant farmer. You're that important to MS-13? Oh yeah, they'll come after you. So where you going? LA. I said, you know that's where it started, right? That's its stronghold, is LA? That's where it started? You're trying to get away from MS-13 by going to LA? You're an idiot and you're a liar. I've got guys who've told me, where are you going to get away from the gangs? Oh, gang violence, where are you going? Oakland. I said, I think people from Oakland are leaving going to El Salvador to get away from the gangs, dude. Going the wrong way. So it is so broken and it is so easily abused that unless we fix it, we are done. I hate being pessimistic, but we are done. De jure, we still have a border, but de facto, we don't. No nation state in the history of mankind, none, has ever been able to survive if it cannot control its borders to a certain extent. And I'm including the Roman Empire. The fact is, every nation state has the right to determine who comes in, if they come in, and how long they come in. That is a right inherent in every nation state. Now, you don't have a right to hold people in. I love when people say, oh, the Berlin Wall. Yeah, we're not keeping people in. You can leave anytime you want. In fact, I wish quite a few would. It's just like at home, you have the right to lock your doors at night, to decide who comes in, who doesn't come in, but you can't lock your family in. That's the exact same thing writ large for a nation state. We do not control our borders anymore. And as I said earlier, those 100,000 that were up there earlier, we're over 140,000 per month. We're releasing them into the country. The GAO did Government Accountability Office did a study like 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 80% won't show up for their hearings. So you hear the left say, oh, there's a 90% approval rate, so the system's really working. No. To break it down to easy numbers, let's say 100 came in and claimed for asylum. 80 wouldn't show up. 20 would. And out of that 20, yes, most of them probably have a good claim. If you had a good claim, you really would go. And so out of that 20 that show up, probably 18 or 17 will get their claim adjudicated in their favor. And then God bless. But it takes years. And these people know now that we're never going to go look for them. And this is part of the grand strategy I'm coming to believe. So the Democrats are now going after ICE. They don't want them to go after criminal felons. I mean, how do we get to that point? We're protecting felons. Garrett Newsom just pardoned a felon so he doesn't get deported? How the hell do we get to that point? 3 or 4 years ago, Democrats were saying, yeah, no, we get it, Chris. We don't want criminals. So if they don't want you going after us, ICE or Border Patrol going after criminal aliens, do you think they want us going after just somebody who didn't show up for their asylum hearing? So they perceive this as future voters, future power. But before we start patting ourselves on the back, remember, we had the House, the Senate, and the presidency for 2 years, Republican controlled, and we did nothing. We saw it starting in 2014 and 15 with the Haitians and others coming up in caravans. We were warned. We told them we need to fix this. And the Republicans who had control did nothing. I deal with a lot of senators and congressmen, and the honest ones will tell you off the record there are Republicans in D.C. in the back room trying to put the kibosh on these deals. And I hate to be honest about this, but I'm going to be, because a lot of them are beholden to big business and big corporations, and they want cheap labor. That is the bottom line. When I first started doing these talks 4 years ago, I would bash the Koch brothers. And I had people going, oh my God, boo, oh, they're great. Most people now clap because they know the Koch brothers have come out of the closet and they're open border advocates. They're in it for themselves, they're in it for the money. I tell people when they're in Davos, Switzerland, their once-a-year meeting, do you think when they bump into George Soros in that very expensive club room that they're at each other's throats, or are they drinking cognac, smoking cigars, and figuring out how to divvy things up? That's the real world. So if we ever get the House back, you better hold Republicans' feet to the fire, because that's probably going to be our last chance. I just talked to a senator the other day, he's on the Homeland Security Committee, and he said he's never seen it this bad, and Congress is not going to do anything. So, the system is not just broken, it's overwhelmed. My guys are leaving, they're burnt out, they're babysitters, that's not what they're paid for, they're federal agents. I have a couple things that we can do without Congress. So Brandon Judd recently went public, said, here's something we can do. Because we only have 400 asylum hearing officers in CIS, only 700 immigration judges. We need a lot more. What Brandon said is that we could take senior Border Patrol agents voluntarily, they have to volunteer, they would be trained, and they'd be cross-designated as asylum hearing officers. Because the law says asylum hearing officer just has to be an immigration officer. We are, by law, besides federal agents, we are, by law, immigration officers. So when we're doing those initial interviews, and my guys do interviews better than anybody I've ever seen. I was a detective. I was trained by the DEA. These guys are doing targeting on cartels and smuggling organizations. Their interviews are thorough. So while they're doing those initial interviews, if they have the time, that's also going to be the asylum hearing officer, the hearing. And they could deny somebody. So when I found that guy lying when he said Jesus Christ was hanging out with Buddha, I would have denied him. You're lying, denied. The other thing is we have to keep pushing to make sure that they only can claim asylum either at a consulate or at an embassy, not at the border. And the other one is, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, but we have to get, and this one I don't know clearly how it's done, but basically a nation state is designated as a safe haven. And what I mean by that is if a Syrian refugee goes to Germany, he's there in Germany. He can't then decide to go, oh, I want to go to France. No, you're in Germany, you stay there, that's a safe haven. If we can get Mexico designated as a safe haven, then they have to stay there. Once they transfer through, they have to stay there. So some of these things don't take congressional action. But if we don't fix that, guys, truly, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I've never seen it this bad. I've seen it more out of control, but when we caught them, we removed them. We're not removing them at all. They're not showing up for their hearings. And look, Americans love the underdog. We believe in fairness and justice. These people are cutting the line. There's people that have been waiting for years to do it the right way. And so the analogy is if you're at Disneyland and you see a guy with a kid cut in line, you're not happy, you're pissed. But if a Disney employee comes up and says, hey, you know, that girl has cancer, and oh, God bless, let her go. These people are cutting the line, they're abusing the system. We just saw a poll, I think it was in El Salvador, something like 1/3 of the people, I think that's like 13 million people, not saying we're thinking about it, saying we are going to come to the United States. The caravans are bad enough, but the cartels, they're money makers. So right now it takes 3 days. They cross the border from Guatemala into Mexico, they're on a bus, they're up to the border, they're pushed through the border in the United States. Now understand this, the cartels have to love this. They're charging $8,000 per person. So the northern end of the smuggling organization is us now. It's the Border Patrol. They don't have to hire as many load drivers or stash house runners. We're it. They push a group of 200 across the border. They all just stand there. They don't try to hide. They claim asylum. I got to bring in vans now to transport them, so I'm now the load driver. I bring them to my station. They get fed. They get showered. They get taken for medical. That's the stash house, the load house now. And then we take them to the airports or the bus stations. We are the northern end of the smuggling route, and the smugglers don't have to pay us anything. So they have to love this. They have to be sitting there laughing their asses off that the U.S. Border Patrol is now part of their smuggling organization.
You know what? We're a group, we have a lot of contact with illegal aliens. They hate our guts. They hate all of you.
All right, well,
They give us,
not.
we're taking over this country. They hate your guts. All 1 million of them.
Michael!
I'm just trying to wake people up.
Well, hopefully I'm doing that. So I am going to open it up to questions, and I have to make this clear. Questions, not statements. And also, please keep it within my wheelhouse. Look, I'm a life member of the NRA, but don't ask me about gun control and like that. I'm going to just keep it in my wheelhouse. So.
Okay, you said there are things we can do, but those are all things that are within the Border Patrol or within the government to do. Let's say that we here could generate a committee of 20 people. What could that committee do?
Well, first thing I just want to touch on something that I forgot to mention is the acting secretary, and I mentioned what we could do is appoint guys as hearing hearing officials. Kevin doesn't want to do that. Kevin McElhenney doesn't want to do it. He's risk averse and he doesn't want to do it. And that's unfortunate. So I think it's going to take, and this is going to segue into what you're saying, is pressure on the president. Because if the president tells Kevin to do it, as acting Secretary of Homeland Security, he'll do it. So you guys need to do a couple things. You need to push the president to do that. But you also need to, you know, this is going to get me into state sanctuary stuff, and I don't always want to go there. I used to only operate in the federal arena. I now have to work at the state level because you people have allowed these idiots to get super majorities in Sacramento. And I'll tell you right now how screwed it up is. We called a local police department a while ago because we'd stopped a drunk driver. We can't hold them. We don't enforce those state laws. The local PD said we cannot come out by state sanctuary law. We had to let a drunk driver go down the road driving. That's not keeping you safer. That's not keeping you safer. I met with a bunch of activists and they're like, you have to stop going to court and getting these guys. I said, these guys are MS-13. They have weapons. They threaten to kill people with them. They're hardcore bad guys. Where would you rather us capture them? In a confined, safe environment where we know he doesn't have a gun because he's in court answering another charge and he went to a metal detector? Or do you want us to try to catch him in your neighborhood and we have a shootout on your street? Which would you prefer? Oh, I never thought of it that way. Okay, well, think of it that way. So the state stuff, look, all these people do listen. Even if you're a Republican running to a Democrat, write them respectfully, write an email and say, this is insane. How did we get from 4 years ago, when I met with people with Democrat D after their name, they understood there was two separate arguments. They understood there was immigration reform, and they understood border security was a separate issue, and they all said, we are for border security, and they were. We're for border security. So we've gotten to the point now that they hate Donald Trump so much. I truly believe that, and look, if you're on the right and you voted for Trump, you like him, great. He does make mistakes. He's not the second coming of the Messiah, but support him. But on the left, I think the vitriolic hatred, the insaneness is so bad that I believe that man can come out of the clouds bodily, holding engraved stone tablets with the cure for AIDS and cancer, and they would still hate him. So write to your electeds, your elected officials, in the state level and the federal level, and say, this has got to stop. You can do that. You can do that. Write letters to the editor. You know, correct them. When you see something like the other day, I actually wrote to a reporter I know because they were reporting Border Patrol shot a guy on the border. No, it was Customs and Border Protection officers. It was a righteous shooting, but it wasn't our guys. Every shooting that happens on the border, it's Border Patrol, Border Patrol. So if you see something in error, correct them. Get a group together. Go talk to these people. Set up meetings with them. But they do pay attention. The biggest thing politicians want to do is get elected. That's it. Bottom line, get elected. Second question.
Before you take a question, tell us about the toxic waste that's coming across the border.
Thank you. So sometimes I'm very immersed, no pun intended, I'm very immersed in this subject is the amount of toxic sewage and chemicals that are flowing across the border from Mexico. We found newspaper articles from 1930 about the sewage coming across. Now there's these maquilas and maquiladoras down there. CBP, under the unions pushing, did studies of the effluent. 300-page report was put out. There is stuff in there that is so horrible. The stuff that Erin Brockovich made her bones on, that's coming across. The chromium hexavalent, whatever it is. Arsenic, cyanide, uranium. This is coming across from Mexico. And the U.S. government has to be more forceful with Mexico. I hear people in the State Department going, oh, Chris, you know it's Mexico. We have a treaty with them. They're violating it. Take them to The Hague or wherever you try in a violation of a treaty. And I hear this all the time. I called Governor Brown out, like, where is this guy? We're an environmental state. You're allowing sewage and stuff to come in. The beaches on Coronado are being polluted. I meet with Rich Bailey, the mayor. Imperial Beach, the beaches are closed for at least a third of the year because of this toxic stuff. And my guys are in it. My guys are in this toxic waste dump. I've been to the hospital because of the stuff I've gotten. We had guys with chemical burns on their feet. We have pictures of their boots disintegrating, melting. This is chemical waste. So thank you for bringing that up, great. Yes?
What are the two laws that judges refer to that establish catch and release?
So there's an agreement. See, the catch and relief is a problem for a couple reasons, and it exists for a couple reasons. We don't have enough detention space. There's 34,000 spaces in the U.S. 34,000, and we're arresting 140,000 a month. Do the math. The other thing is the Flores Agreement. And so what that says is, part of it's good. It makes us treat juveniles better than we did. We can't treat them like adults. That's fine. We're good with that. But the other part is the 20-day time limit. So we have to release a juvenile in 20 days. So everybody and their brother now brings a kid and claims it's their kid. If you're a family unit, we're going to release you. And that happened because we had this fiasco that was, we started it last summer. It was not resourced properly. It wasn't planned for properly. It fell apart. And the president got a black eye and he walked it back and he said, executive order, we have to obey it. He said, you will not separate family units. So if I'm an MS-13 guy, I'm going to bring some kid with me and say, that's my kid. And so we can't hold you now because you have a kid. We can't hold the kid. We can't separate you, so we have to let you go. So that's the problem with catch and release, was the Flores agreement.
Yeah, the Flores agreement was a compromise from some other law. So what was...
No, it was a lawsuit.
What was the base law?
It was a lawsuit. It wasn't a compromise on laws.
There was a lawsuit based upon a violation of what law?
The lawsuit was just that they violated this girl's rights in that she shouldn't be treated that way. So it became, she was a minor, 1985, and they sued, and in 1997 they came to an agreement, but it's being overseen by the courts, so we can't just arbitrarily walk away from it. Ninth Circuit's involved. The Ninth Circuit's never going to let Trump walk away from it. Next question.
This might be an ignorant question, but I've never heard of the toxic waste coming across the border. So why are they bringing it here, and where does it go?
So it flows across. Tijuana is elevated higher than us, and the president's heard about it. I did a story with Malia Zimmerman of Fox News 2 years ago, and the president tweeted about it, how horrible it was that we had to live in it. But it's a higher elevation, and they just let the stuff flow out. Understand that these Maquilas and Maquiladoras, they're American corporations, they're international corporations. They went down there not just for cheap labor, but because of the lax enforcement of environmental laws. I had Darrell Issa when he was still congressman out on the border. He made his money in the automotive industry, and he said, Chris, I know people that, automotive makers who sent their chrome manufacturing down there because the egregious byproducts. So there's people that know about it. It just doesn't, look, if it happened in Sacramento and the Beltway, it would have been solved years ago. But it's down in San Diego, it's in the Tijuana River Valley, and it flows through the river, and it flows through the canyons. Next question.
What about the tariff that Trump wants?
Love it, thank you. Oh. 3-part, I won't remember. It's another one, okay.
Where do they get released to? Where do they go? Do they get on welfare?
So understand, so let me try to remember all these questions. One was about the tariffs, outstanding idea. Outstanding. Look, Obrador, the president of Mexico, is a socialist. He doesn't like us. He's not going to do it out of the kindness of his heart. I would tell you this, when I was still working and I was doing intel and things like that, I saw a report from the government of Mexico last summer, who they identified as one of the actors and organizers in these caravans. They're not the only one. Venezuelan intelligence. That's from the government of Mexico. Venezuelan intelligence is behind some of this, which means Cuban intelligence is behind it, which means Russian intelligence is behind it. This is what they did during the Cold War. Putin is a KGB dude. This is what they did in the whole Cold War. Anything that degrades our society, that causes us to spend money on other than defense, anything that causes disruption in our country, that's a good thing for them. So the tariffs, I think, are a wonderful idea. Are some of our people in our country going to take a hit on that for a while? Yeah, I'm sure. That sucks. You know, sometimes you have to listen to JFK. It's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Hopefully, if we ratchet it up enough, he really will try to secure his southern border. And he can. Look, these people, they made 43 students disappear. They can control their border if they want to. The other question was closing the border. I've worked with Brian Bilbray on the sewage issue, another former congressman from down there. He actually closed the border. They said they would close the port of entry for a few hours to prove a point to Mexico. I think that's a wonderful idea too. And again, people in America are gonna bitch and moan, I get it, but it's gonna hurt them more than it hurts us. And the third part of his question, if I remember correctly, you got 3 in there. Remind me what the third part was. Oh, where are they going? Okay. So understand this though, it's a misnomer to call them all illegal aliens, because the ones that are coming through the port of entry, that's perfectly legal. They're abusing the system and they're lying, and if we catch them lying, it's a separate federal crime. But the fact is, they're not an illegal alien. They're an asylee. They're asylum seekers. Now, if they jump the fence, they've just broken the law. And get this right too, please. When people say it's not a criminal act to jump the wall, bullshit. It's a misdemeanor. 8 U.S.C., 8 U.S. Code 1325, entry without inspection. First offense, first time misdemeanor, second time felony. But understand this too, even if they jump the fence, because they don't want to wait in line at the port of entry, they even could get 2 weeks in jail, but it will not have a negative impact on their asylum claim. So, Where are they going? These people that are illegal, these people that are asylum seekers, they're going around the country. They're flying, they have a sponsor who will fly them somewhere. TSA has special protocols for them. They get to kind of go around the checkpoint. It's insane. And they're going to different parts of the country on their own. At that point, they're paying for it. Now, I heard earlier people were talking about the Marietta thing. Please, if you're going to go to that protest, God bless. I was at the one in 2014 or 15. But make sure it's not against the Border Patrol or the agents. No, I get that. Just make sure it looks that way. They are bringing them here from Rio Grande Valley, RGV. We're overwhelmed here, but they're more overwhelmed there. So it's a simple fact that we don't have the logistics or the processing centers for the agents to do it there. So they're flying them to Murrieta, they're going to the San Clemente station, and they're basically just big glorified processing centers now. I'll come to you.
The crisis is not on the border. The crisis is in the inner cities. And what has happened to us over the last 20, 30 years, where we've been pretty much exterminated out of all our communities and all our neighborhoods, job, school, we're living on the street. If you would take that message, the right message, Democrats are more afraid of anything than losing our vote. 20% or less of our vote, they will never win another election. So if he can change his message a little bit to let him know to address the forgotten American, us and veterans, people living on the street, because now they've put these illegal into these areas, whatever, it would change a lot.
So I love what she said. It was a statement, not a question, but I'm going to kind of turn it into a question. One of the things is that if you live in a community and MS-13 is killing your kids, in that community the press will report about it. But the national media doesn't put it together deliberately. I mean, there's kids being killed in Long Island by MS-13, their heads cut off. It's happening in Fairfax County. It's happening in different communities. But most of the people that are middle of the road or slightly left of center, they're not hearing about it by the national media. You would think somebody would get a Pulitzer by going and saying, I put all these together. Let's show America the crisis of the crime and the deaths. But they're not doing that. And angel moms are able to talk about that sometimes. But even they don't get all that much press in the national media. And so the statement was that we need to let them know that it's killing people in the inner cities. I get that. I get that. It also, it stagnates and lowers wages. Look, Cesar Chavez is loved out here. I actually like Cesar Chavez. They've changed his history. You know, the left likes to change history. But the fact was he used to call the Border Patrol when illegals, he knew that he could never get the farm workers better wages or better working conditions if they could just bring in new illegals. He had his own goon squad that would beat up on him. He called the Border Patrol. The guy was anything but an open border activist or bringing more illegals. So yeah, the crime is happening. People are being killed. MS-13 and 18th Street and others are here. And I hear people saying to me, well, you know, Chris, we have our, you know, there's American criminals. Yeah, right, I get it. We grow our own here. We don't need to import more. If I had an empty continent like, well, I don't know, like Australia, I'd send all our criminals there. But the British beat us to it. So her point was well made. I'll paraphrase for you.
My question is,
I'm going to paraphrase it for them.
when you were starting your presentation, you said that you had the power as a Republican to go out and take all the people that are here, pass their visas, and deport them. Why?
So because we don't have a system in place to find them. We don't have a system in place to even know who's here. So the government was supposed to do this. There was a blue ribbon panel. They did not do it. So my guys, there's nothing to show who's here, who to even start looking for. There's no system to show when you leave or that you actually left. So until we can get that in place, we would not know who to even start looking for. We don't keep track of who leaves. We don't keep track of who leaves. So you come in and it's an honor system. You leave. Oh, it's horrible. Now we used to do transportation checks. And at the airport and at the train stations, and we'd catch visa overstays then. And understand that is the one thing that is not a criminal act. The visa overstay is a civil offense, and that needs to change too. But then again, that's Congress. But the fact is, we would love to. Look, I'm Irish, but I'll go to every Irish pub and round up every young Irish lad with a wonderful brogue and a beautiful Irish lass. I'll round them all up because they're all visa overstays. They came here as students and they didn't leave. Yes, Miss Agnes.
Can states and catch and release?
Can the states?
Yeah.
No, the states can't. You saw Arizona a few years ago try to pass complementary laws that were complementary to the federal laws, and the Obama administration and others sued them, and they mostly lost those laws, which drives me crazy because the left loves it though when California and other states pass laws that are in direct contravention to federal laws. They love it then. But when Arizona tried to pass laws that were complementary to, but the courts are very clear that that kind of stuff is only in the federal domain. Now, there are some states and some PDs and sheriff's departments that still will work with us. But, there's becoming more and more cities that are sanctuary cities. California's a sanctuary state. So, it's gone into the realm of just being crazy.
States and presumably localities can pass mandatory E-Verify. That was upheld by the US Supreme Court.
So that's the other thing. Why don't we have a national mandatory E-Verify? We had 2 years to do that. I literally, clap. Like, we should have a national mandatory E-Verify. I did a talk one time, and a guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Chris, I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I'm a Republican. I'm a small business owner, but I hire illegals." And I looked at him and said, "Why?" And he said, "I have to. My competition does. If I don't, they'll undercut me. But give me a national mandatory E-Verify, and I won't." So that's another one that we need is national mandatory E-Verify. National mandatory E-Verify. I'll come to you next. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just a little curious about how the slumlord situation ties into the illegal aliens. I will give you an example. A few years ago, you may remember this, Escondido City passed a law that you couldn't rent to illegal aliens. It just killed the real estate business in that city.
Well, it's sad that it killed it. What she said was that, like, Escondido tried to pass a law where the apartment owners couldn't knowingly give apartments or rent apartments to illegals, and it killed the real estate. Well, that's sad then that Escondido let itself get to the point, in the real estate business at least, that the only thing that kept them going was illegal aliens. I can tell you this is my belief, and you can take it as you will, but if you run a company and the only way you can make it work is by hiring illegals and paying them substandard wages, your business model might need tweaking. That should not be your business model, be it in real estate or whatever, that I need illegals to make money. That should not be the way it is.
Chris, we are past time. Let's go with 2 more questions, and we are going to have to let it go here for this evening.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so she says she calls this an invasion while the military's not down there. I call it an invasion too when you forcibly try to enter the United States. We saw that in December when they tried to forcibly break through the wall, assaulted 3 of my agents with rocks, bottles, and chunks of concrete. One had his knee smashed so badly he had to have surgery. That's an invasion. She said, "Why isn't the military down there?" We can't. We have a treaty with Mexico where we will not militarize the border. The military isn't trained in law enforcement. And anything inside the border would be posse comitatus would be a problem. And look, we're a compassionate people, and you don't want to shoot your foot in this because the minute that the media, and trust me, the media would have a field day with this, of Marines shooting down, and then the bad guys would put the kids and women first, and gunning them down as they came across the border, we'd be done. We'd be done. So you're first. Mm-hmm. It's going to rate to smuggle somebody in.
Yeah, where's all the money coming from? I mean, if there's $150,000 a month now.
So she asked where the money's coming from to pay for somebody's $8,000. And trust me, I heard some liberal activists say, "Oh, they have to pay that off." No, the cartels don't front you money. You pay it off mostly up front. Understand, in remittances, that's when people in this country send money to other countries. Mexico makes more in remittances than it does from Pemex anymore. They passed that like 2 years ago, where the people in this country are sending money to Mexico from here. And understand this, we have a finite amount of money. We might like to think that the government just prints money in a printing press and doesn't think anything of it, but there's a finite amount of money. When that money leaves this economy and goes to another country, it's out of circulation in this economy, which does bad things for us. I was on a panel with a UCSD professor, excuse me, SDSU professor, very liberal, very left-wing, and people were asking about taxing the remittances. And he said, "You couldn't do that." He said, "Because, we'd be taxing their money twice." And I said, "You're a Republican." And he's looking at me like, "What?" I said, "That's the estate tax. You guys on the left love the estate taxes. That's taxing people's money twice. You seem to think it's okay, so I don't see why the president can't tax remittances." 5% tax. But the money's coming from people in this country, sending it down there through remittances. That's where most of it comes. All right, so look, my ask for you is just that you contact your people, contact your electeds, write letters to the editor, support the Border Patrol. And I know you're going to thank me, and I appreciate that, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I want to tell you. I told the Congress one time, I have the easiest union job in the world. My guys, all I have to do is my guys want to work harder. Let the men and women of the Border Patrol who took an oath to defend the Constitution, to defend this country, and to defend the people therein, let them do their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.